We would once again like to thank Kamikoto for being the sponsor of today's video. Long before we had a YouTube channel, these were the knives that I had in my kitchen. So when I get emails from people saying, hey, what knives do you use? It's easy. I use Kamikoto knives, and they've been kind enough to extend $50 off of your first Kamikoto knife purchase using the code EHOME. I'll put a link to that below. These are Japanese steel knives that are forged by Japanese master craftsmen, and the result is a shockingly sharp knife that's easy to clean, that fits perfectly in your hands, and that are made to last an entire lifetime. Michelin star chefs around the world use these knives because of the blade's wonderful precision and dexterity. They feel good in your hand, and they would look really good under the Christmas tree. So use the link below and code EHOME for $50 off. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Elliott Homestead. Every year at the end of the year, Stuart and I like to sit down and just sort of brainstorm and dream and reflect. Think about the year ahead, what's worked well for us, what we need to improve on, and kind of where we want to see our little farm go. So we thought today would be fun to sort of bring back some of those memories, flash back to some of the highlights of this year, and celebrate, think, ponder. So for those of you who are new here, we live on just 2.5 acres in the middle of Washington State. So for a homesteading family, this is a really small amount of land. We've had to learn how to adapt, cut some things out, and just kind of figure out how to make the land work for us. I think that's kind of a constant struggle for any homesteader.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I think, so this is our 7th year being here on this particular farm. And we've learned a lot about what we can do well on our little piece of land. And we've learned some things about what we needed to let go of
right.
as well. Yeah.
So I had this idyllic view in my mind of what a farm would be when we finally moved here 7 years ago. And I bought geese, which was not a great fit for us. We had them for many years.
We did. Yeah. We had our geese for several years, and they give us giant goose
beautiful eggs.
Yeah. In the spring, but they were also very loud.
They needed more space away from humans.
Yes. Yeah. In order to be loud and obnoxious. But our little flock of geese, every morning when we'd walk up to feed the animals, they would just go crazy, honking, and
they're so loud.
So we quickly learned that well, actually not so quickly. It took us a while to get
a few years. I still want them, honestly. But with the kids being little, the geese chasing them around, it just wasn't a good fit.
Yeah.
We've also let go of pigs since we moved here. So 7 years ago, we were raising 2 pigs a year for our own family's harvest. And then we got breeding stock. We bred old spots for quite a few years. And we had to let that go as well. And that was a really tough one for me. I remember when we had to sit down and you just said, I don't think we can do this anymore. And we ended up butchering our breeding stock. And that was a really hard moment. It felt like a huge defeat.
I think one of the things you realize when you are trying to make homesteading life work on a small piece of land with what you've got, it's okay to try things, even if in the future it wasn't the thing that panned out. You know, it wasn't the thing that stuck. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know unless you try to give it a shot. And I think the pigs was one of those things. I'm glad we did that. I'm also glad that we decided that wasn't the right thing anymore for right now, for our land. And so now we're thinking of ways that we can use that land and now the time that we've gotten back from raising pigs in ways that are more suitable to our area and our little piece of land. And that's kind of how you have to think about things, I think, when you're doing this.
Yeah. So, just in case any of you have also encountered this, where you bring an animal to your farm, then you realize it's time to let that go. It's just not forever. And that's what I tell myself. This farm and what we do on it is really this like living, breathing thing. And it goes, right? Like it has its tides, and things come and things go and things sort of flux and then they sort of taper back a bit. And especially with raising 4 kids and homeschooling them, we've had to just accept that this shifts. It doesn't look the same, and it's certainly not rigid. So this past year was a year of surprises, as all years on the farm are. We took a year off from milking our dairy cow. We've been hand milking a cow for 10 years, and we just decided we were going to take a break. We were going to give our cow a break. She'd already done 4 lactations for us, and so we just thought, actually 5. It's just time. Let's just give her a break. We'll just focus on the gardens this year. We ended up putting her with a bull for about 4 or 5 months, and the bull was sterile. This is a bull we've used before, but he just hit his peak and he slid down that hill real fast. So she was open. What that means is she wasn't bred. So we'd given her a year off, fully expecting her to have a calf in April, and that didn't happen. We kind of kept waiting and kind of kept waiting. We didn't preg check her because we'd used this bull before, just the year before. He was proven. So we didn't really think anything of it. Lesson learned. So she has spent the last 4 months at another friend's farm with her bulls, and we need to preg check her because now we've been 18 months without milk here on the farm, which is a really big deal.
It is. Yeah. And, the milking is a big source of food for us. And we make the yogurt, we try to make cheese. And it's also, we spend a lot of time doing it.
Right.
But it ends up being one of those areas where we're constantly asking ourselves, is this the right thing for our farm and in our situation? Some of the challenging things about that has been getting our cow pregnant,
right.
not having the space for a bull here.
Right.
So that means doing it artificially or sending the cow off somewhere or bringing a bull on. And all of those are, rather challenging.
So cows are my favorite. They're my favorite farm animal, and my life feels so much happier when I'm around them. But I think if Cece's bred, we will gladly go into this year with milk, and that will be excellent. If she's not, I think our farm has to face kind of a hard decision of, okay, she spent a year with a bull. She didn't get bred. Dairy cows are notoriously hard to breed. This is just part of the struggle. Anyone who has a cow will tell you the same. But I think as the kids have sort of like grown into doing chores and grown into being a part of the farm in a more active way, the idea of bringing on a dairy animal, such as dairy sheep, is really appealing because we keep a ram here year round anyway for our meat sheep. And the size is just very manageable for the kids. We want to teach them how to milk. We want that to be part of their chore and part of their process. And so I don't know. I don't know exactly what the future will hold for our little dairy operation. Of course, we drink a lot of milk and use a lot of dairy products. So if we were to go the route of dairy sheep, we would probably be looking at milking at least 2 or 3. So something we're contemplating. Who knows?
Yep.
We'll see what the year brings.
Yeah. And again, it just demonstrates one of the lessons that we've had to learn in our 7 years here is you got to be willing to be flexible and change things up and sometimes make the hard decisions about what's working well and what isn't and what you can do better. But I think the goal is always to strive to do the best that you can with what you have. And we're constantly learning about what that
figuring
actually
that
means.
out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We had a fairly good year with our little Katahdin herd. These are meat sheep that we raise for meat here. Lambing didn't go super great. It wasn't our best year. We lost some lambs, but our breeding ewes that we keep year round, we keep 3 breeding ewes. They were at the end of their line, their breeding line. We knew we were pushing them. One of them I had as a bottle lamb when my 3rd child was born. So they've been around the block with us. They've been with us since our old farm, which was over 7 years ago. And so this year, lambing sort of reflected their age. And so we brought some new ones on. We brought 3 new breeding ewes, all Katahdins from a reputable breeder here in our state. They're beautiful. You can tell that when you buy breeding stock from good breeders, they know what they're doing. They're beautiful ewes. They have very feminine heads, very nice feminine, but like stout and meaty bodies. And I'm really excited to see the lambs that they give us later this winter.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that'll be fun. And I think as we've been thinking about that portion of things, increasing our lamb herd might be in our future. They're a little bit easier to manage on smaller pieces. And we do have access to some land around as well, which they graze during the summertime. So it's kind of a great setup. And would love to maybe build that out a little bit more in the future.
We both love sheep. I mean, sheep can be very absent-minded, but we enjoy their presence a lot.
Yeah.
Major milestone that we hit this last year was we finally built our chicken coop. When we moved here 7 years ago, we put it way too close to the house and way too close to the gardens, and the fences were way too short. And as idyllic as it sounds to have free-range chickens, when you have gardens, that is just out of the question. You have to choose if you want tomatoes or free-range chickens. And so we moved them to the other side of the property and we built a 10-foot fence.
Yeah, just about.
Around their run. So they still have a huge outdoor area where they can be and scratch and play in the sunshine, do anything they want as a chicken, but they cannot get into my garden.
Yeah, it keeps them contained.
Yes.
A lot better. Yeah,
yes,
for sure.
And the smell stays away from the house. So one thing we got really aggressive about this last year was replacing basically our entire laying flock at least every 2 years. We had to buy in a lot of eggs last winter, and that just devastated me because we feed our chickens really good, expensive grain. And to be buying that and buying eggs is just insult to injury. And so I talked to my chicken farmer and I asked him, what am I doing wrong? And he said, you got to get new fresh chickens because their egg production just goes down so significantly.
Yeah.
So we followed his advice. We brought in basically a new flock. And then the next year kind of brought in another new flock. So we have 2 generations now. And egg production, even now, is still really high.
It is. Yeah. This is usually when it drops off significantly for us in the winter. And we've been just fine. So I think that's had a huge impact on our ability to have eggs through the winter, which has been great. Yeah.
This last year was great too because our 2 young boys who are 10 and 8 took over feeding the animals. Stuart spent a good long while training them, how to drive the golf cart, how to put hay in the back, how to do the waters, how to grain the chickens, and they've done a great job.
Yeah, they've really taken to it. It's kind of crazy to see how much help it actually is.
It really is.
Yeah. So it's a great stage to be at.
So there are some things that we've had to let go of in the past that we're really excited to bring back to the farm this year. We raised meat ducks and we took the last 2 years off of that. So those are going to be coming back to the farm in the spring. They're an excellent meat source and they fatten really fast. They're fun to harvest and they're really delicious to eat. They're also not something that's really easily replaced at a grocery store. We have nowhere local here where we can get really good duck meat. And so if you want it, you kind of have to do it yourself. Also, we let go of rabbits a couple of years, actually, when we moved to this farm, wasn't it?
Pretty much. I think we did it just for a little bit.
Meat rabbits are an incredible source of meat. They're really easy to manage, and we think it's the perfect time for our kids to kind of start managing a little business that we can sort of train them up in, teach them how to keep books on it, teach them. They have already gotten really good at knowing you got to take care of the animals every day. So we're hoping to bring meat rabbits back to the farm in the coming year. All right, let's talk about the gardens. 2 years ago, we put in our huge market garden and it worked wonderfully. I had help in the gardens the last 2 years and that helped move away in the middle of this year. And so I got a little bit behind just learning how to manage it all myself. And I realized pretty quickly that in order to do my gardening well, I needed to do less. And not necessarily less beds, but less types of vegetables and a little bit less crowding. I think any gardeners do this. We get so excited, so overzealous. We just pack it all in. And that's great, but it does make it difficult to harvest, difficult to manage, and you miss things. They get buried.
Yeah, I think some of the things that we've learned about the market garden space is that we need to do a better job going up. So trellising and the trellises that we put in the past work in the very beginning, but they quickly get outgrown. So those are gonna be getting stronger and taller, basically. And I think that's going to help a lot. And then, as you said, we have a tendency to overplant.
Right.
Which it's always fun in the spring to put all the plants in the ground, all the seeds and everything. And it's fun to watch them pop up. But once they overtake, that's not fun anymore. And it's counterproductive. You can't really harvest, or we can't really harvest it properly. So we're paring back on like tomatoes. Yeah.
Hurts.
and maybe peppers, beans, eggplants.
Yeah. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But it does hurt. I'm going to really try to dial in. I'll be talking a lot more about this on the channel, but I want to dial in the varieties that we do grow for our tastes, for our needs, because if you're only growing 6 eggplant plants, you want them to be like exactly what you want them to be. And same with tomatoes. If you're only growing a dozen plants, which is like 1/6 of what I normally grow, I think the harvest can still match if they're pruned and harvested correctly. But man, they gotta be dialed in. Yeah. They gotta be exactly what you want to eat. And so this year, my goal is getting the trellising in order, making sure that the garden stays tidy so that things don't get lost and our work essentially doesn't go to waste. And then really dialing in varieties for flavor.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think the things that we've done well so far have been potatoes, sweet potatoes, onions, cabbages, and then a lot of early spring stuff as well, lettuces and whatnot, which usually go away before the garden gets crazy.
So summers here get really, really, really hot. So this last year we had 90 days straight where it was over 90 degrees. So managing the garden is just very physically hard because it's so hot outside.
Yeah. Yep.
So it does always hit that point, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. But I think we'll be set up to kind of dial it in.
Yeah.
The mindset you have to have with the other homesteading stuff, like with the animals, is the same one you really have to have with the gardens. It seems like you've got to be willing to just get a little bit better every year and change things a little bit more every year. And you think about it, I think about this with processing our animals that we grow for meat. I mean, you do that once a year. So your butchering skills are going to grow just once a year, basically.
Right.
And it's the same with growing a garden. I mean, you get one shot every year to increase your skills at it. And so you do really have to be willing to say, this has been a 7-year learning process or more, to see exactly what we need to do, what we need to change. And each year you're going to find out a little bit more. So you have to have that mindset and willingness to let things progress at that rate.
Yeah. And let that be an encouragement as we kind of round out. I mean, this isn't something that's built overnight, and it's certainly not something that's learned overnight. We sit down every year and do these videos, and every year we've learned something. So there's no fast track to figuring this all out. It's a process, and I know that's not a very glamorous answer, but you kind of need to be long-suffering with your land and long-suffering with your animals and the people you work the farm with, and just keep it between the ditches. Every year, just try to keep it between the ditches.
Yep. And like we say, we'll get them next year.
We'll get them next year.
Yeah.